Hello, I'm Don Ward. I'm Chief Executive of CIB, and welcome to the latest in our series, CIB in Conversation. CIB is the global network for collaboration in research and innovation in the built environment. And to everyone watching this conversation, whether you're members of CIB or guests from around the world, a very warm welcome. For more information about what we do and how we add value for our global community, please refer to the website. And today I'm delighted to welcome Keith Hampson to join us. Now, Keith in CIB is best known as our president. He took over in that role last year in 2019 as president at the World Building Congress, and he'll serve until the next World Building Congress, which is in Melbourne in 2022. Today, we're going to have a two-part conversation. The first part is about his own research career, how he got into the field he's in, and his research interests. And then in part two, we'll talk about his role as president of CIB, his vision for what we do, and the key initiatives that he is focused on. So Keith, welcome to CIB in Conversation from your office there in Curtin University in Perth.
Great to have this opportunity to have a chat with you, Don.
Keith, let's start with a quick overview of your career and your own area of research expertise.
Can I say at the outset that I'm delighted to have the opportunity to help reshape the CIB going forward. Look, my career, Don, has started, I guess if I wanted to go quite a way back, I grew up on a farm, and as one of quite a few boys and a girl, where my father had an expectation that I, like his father, would become a farmer. But I'm sorry to have disappointed him, and I went off to school and had every motivation to do anything but farming. So it was the case that having been skilled in some of the practical aspects, it's no surprise that in my teens I developed an interest in engineering. And that wasn't entirely shattering to my dad, because at least it was practical. I mean, had I become a philosopher, I think he would have run the tractor off the cliff. As a teenager, I would watch excavators and graders and scrapers moving vast volumes of soil and creating a freeway. Later in high schooling, I was fortunate enough to have earned a place into a university and went off to become an engineer. And fortunately, I was able to secure a scholarship to be a water supply and sewerage engineer at the time with Brisbane City Council. So over a period of 6 years, I had the chance to do investigation, design, construction and asset management of Brisbane's water supply and sewerage systems. From an early age, I was lucky enough to be in a management role, looking after people from a blue-collar background on one hand, and as time went on, in a more junior management capacity, looking after some of the more junior designers and constructors. So it was a great introduction to civil engineering. 5 years there, and then I had the opportunity to head on to the UK as part of a Confederation of British Industry Scholarship, and worked for the Channel Tunnel Consortium at Dover, and indeed in Victoria up in London with the joint French and English design teams. Great multicultural experience, great ability to have benefited from working and living in another country, and of course combined with the Australian connection with the continent by getting a Volkswagen camper van and camping in all sorts of car parks and dead-end streets throughout Europe. But a great experience, and after 5 years in Port of Brisbane, after a year working for Atkins in London and in Dover, I then came back to Australia and decided that it was time to do a MBA, a Masters of Business Administration. I then took the leap to then go into, paralleling with that, to go into an academic role where I was teaching basic construction and water engineering to civil engineers, and then building and quantity surveying in the new construction management and property school at Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane in Queensland.
It's interesting, as someone who spent 13 years in industry, you know, what made you take that step? I understand the move to an MBA, but a lot of people in industry who take an MBA would still see themselves as staying as industry. What was it that attracted you to move towards academia?
I was at a crossroads. In my mind, I'd envisaged that I was going to run a larger consulting organisation, but in my heart, I was enjoying academia, and I had to make a choice to invest in some years of further study. After having done an undergraduate and a master's, it was really clear to me, and made very clear to me by the leaders in the university at the time, that if I was seeking a career in a research or academic post, I needed to have a doctorate. I was fortunate in applying for that scholarship, was awarded the scholarship, and gained entry to Stanford University in the US. And I have to say that 3 years at Stanford University in the heart of Silicon Valley was transformational, really. And I say that, and I know that's probably an overused word today, but it really did highlight to me the importance that industry could have in university research. Having come through industry in Australia, and as you say, 13 years in industry in Australia, and then 3 or 4 years in an academic role, the interface between industry and academia was superficial, to say the least, but it was almost antagonistic in a sense. Yeah. That was in no way beneficial to either industry and their learnings, and academics and researchers in terms of their engagement and, you know, can I say, research for the real world. So there was a great acknowledgement that in the US system, that the engagement between industry on one hand and researchers and universities on the other was symbiotic, both in a personal sense, in a financial sense, and certainly in shared outcomes of research. So if there was one of the most important messages, if you like, that I took back to Australia, was that importance of industry research relationships.
Well, that's a nice link both to the purpose and raison d'etre of CIB, Keith, but also tell us a little bit about the area of research then that you undertook your PhD in.
My research, together with Caltrans and the Department of Transportation in Texas, was looking at the way that firms can use technology strategy to engage in business. And in essence, what I meant by technology strategy was largely some of the things that I've just mentioned. It's about the engagement with university researchers, with manufacturers, with consultants, and partnerships with clients to make sure that what they were delivering weren't just low bid contracts slipping through on minimum standards, but how we can drive better outcomes, particularly in the post-earthquake era of that time, to drive better standards and higher levels of resilience in infrastructure. But importantly, some of the measures that I developed and used in that research were about relationship measures, relationships between industry and university researchers, and how we might look at processes for developing those and measuring, if you like, the intensity of those relationships. And I'm really pleased to say, of course, that a more heightened approach to the use of technology strategy as defined was indeed associated with improved performance in the marketplace.
What then took you into, this field over your left shoulder is the SBEnrc banner. What brought you into the field of running that type of industry academic organisation?
There was a fertile field in Australia at the time. The Australian government was encouraging the development of these new entities called CRCs, Cooperative Research Centres. QUT, CSIRO, RMIT, University of Sydney, University of Newcastle, together with the Australian government and state governments, we formed a bid for the CRC for construction innovation. And together with my head of school at the time, Tony Sidwell, with Derek Walker and myself, we worked together over a period of some months and over a period of some years and developed the successful bid for the CRC for construction innovation, which when I met you, Don, in London in 2005, was in mid-flight. So 2000 to 2009, over that 10-year period, we brought together industry, government and research across 28 organisations around Australia, with key links internationally through Salford University, through other organisations, Stanford University, for example. We brought together international practice, including constructing excellence as our international partners to what was the initial founding of industry research as a national centre in Australia, and it's been a great legacy that we've built on ever since.
What do you think is the most interesting recent finding in this area that our viewers ought to know about, or for that matter, the policymakers ought to know about?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Don. It's come a long way since 1999, but one of the enablers for better and closer working relationships, and I mentioned a minute ago that the client, the designer, the constructor, and ideally the asset manager for the lifetime of the facility could and should be integrated in the process throughout. But one of the enablers for that process to occur successfully is integrated ICT, integrated information and communication technologies. Today we see many organisations out there with BIM or digital engineering, linking planning, design, construction and asset management, and document control and progress control and cost management processes in seamless digital tools that support working together. But not only do they support working together, but given that they're digital, they support remote working together. So we're now in a position, and inevitably in this conversation we'll come to COVID. In a COVID world, the ability for an industry like construction, and really we should be thinking not just construction, I mean if we think of property, planning, design, construction, asset management as being the built environment, the ability for those disciplines which make up this industry in its entirety, for them to work together effectively in what might be called contractor engagement or early contractor involvement or alliance contracting. A precursor is largely the ability, particularly today, for the ability to work across the supply chain, to work together and even to work together remotely and globally, so that we can run projects now in a global environment much more effectively than we ever could.
Keith, I have to say it's been a very consistent thread in this conversation that you've talked a lot about the whole life cycle of built environment, right from when you were a municipal engineer in your early career, from design all the way through to asset management. So it's a very striking consistency actually in the way in which you speak about built environment and multidisciplinarity. You know, a lot of our viewers today and watching this recording afterwards will be PhD students or early career researchers. So what would be your message to them about the value of professional bodies?
My advice is jump in. My advice would be to, if you understand that the world is connected, and if you understand that in that connectivity are networks, and I can assure you there are, professional bodies both provide you with personal and professional connections that can be happy and satisfying at a personal level, but in a career development level can be pivotal in the way that you can look towards advisors and mentors and influencers in your career and in your personal life, of course. So I can only encourage those involved in the different disciplines that make up CIB, in the design, in the construction economics, in the engineering, in the asset management, in the legal, in the safety areas, to get involved in professional associations. I would say go for it, embrace it, and the future's in your hands in that sense.
Thinking now about politicians and policymakers around the world, sort of in one sentence, what would be your top your message, that the top opportunity or challenge for them that you'd like them to be thinking about?
Today, we are seeing around the world some of the rebuilding efforts or the stimulus packages and the challenges to our national economies around, for example, social and physical infrastructure. I really urge politicians to invest in the skills and capability development very much in concert with the investment in the physical infrastructure. A construction project is an absolutely welcome addition, particularly in this context in the built environment field, to creation of jobs and keeping people off unemployment queues. But if that's not associated or integrated with skill developments at a trade and professional level, then the benefit is just like a sugar hit. It's very short, sharp, and it probably doesn't cause long-term benefit or bring about long-term economic and human benefit. So I think it's connecting skills and capability development with physical infrastructure.
That brings us to the end of this, what is the first part really of our conversation, Keith. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you in your capacity as Chief Executive of the Sustainable Built Environment National Research Centre, to understand, how your career developed and what your research interests are. In part two, we're going to talk much more about the CIB and in your role as president. But for now, we'll call a halt to this conversation. And I can only say I found it fascinating. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope our viewers have also enjoyed the discussion.